Welcome to Distro Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Distro Podcast. Today's featured guest is CEO and co-founder of EndoDNA, Len May. Did not mean to rhyme that intentionally, but it works. Len, welcome, and thanks for taking the time.
No, thank you. And you gave me an opener for my next, hip hop performance that I'm going to do. So I appreciate that.
Hip hop's cool. I thought maybe you were like a stand-up comedian or something. So either one could work.
I'll take it too.
Awesome. Well, Len, would love to give you the floor and have you share about your background, your experiences, and as much as you're willing to share about your journey of getting to where you are today with EndoDNA.
Yeah. So background wise, I was born in Lithuania, which is it used to be part of the Soviet Union, but it's a Baltic state country. And I immigrated to the U.S. when I was 6 years old. My family moved to Philadelphia, and I grew up in Philadelphia. I live in Los Angeles now for the last 15 years. But I was the kind of kid who would sit in class and the teacher would call on me, and my mind was elsewhere. So I was always sort of daydreaming, and I was diagnosed with the attention deficit disorder, or ADD, ADHD, when I was like 14, and put on prescription medication. And can't say that it didn't really work. It depends how you define work. Like, it did help me to focus, but it actually took away my connection with self. And I was going to school, and I was hanging out with some older kids, and they asked me if I wanted to smoke a cigarette. And I was like, cool, I'll smoke a cigarette with these kids and be part of this group. I never questioned why they only have one cigarette, but that's besides the point. It was like four of us or something like that. They passed the cigarette around, got to me. I was dabbling already, so I took a drag, and it didn't taste like a cigarette I know. So took another drag, and they were laughing at me. It was they filled it with cannabis at the time. So I went back to class, and the windows that were open in my head, like you would have on your computer, they sort of narrowed in and I could focus. So it became my go-to medicine. I never really talked about it with anybody. We were just hanging out and trying to get, hey, kids are going to find weed and all that stuff. But I didn't never communicate that it actually helped me as a therapeutic as well. So fast forwarding, my parents would catch me. And then when I was just about 18, they ended up kicking me out, calling the cops, had me arrested and trying to kick me out, or kick me out. The irony of this, my parents consume formulations that my company has patents on now for their conditions. So it all kind of came full circle, but that's, it was quite an experience. So, I was homeless for a while. I did motel rooms, crashed on people's couches, got a job at a music store called Tower Records, which is no longer around, but started going to college and went to physical therapy school, went to a festival and saw there was these kids that were trying to register people to vote. They were called the Cannabis Action Network. So long story, a little bit longer. I ended up becoming the president of the Cannabis Action Network, held a rally at Independence Hall in Philadelphia, and a keynote speaker that had a federally prescribed cannabis with a USDA label for her degenerative glaucoma. There was 16 people that got this cannabis, even though, it's federally legal, but they were getting prescribed anyway. That's different, interesting, dichotomies in the way our government operates. Having a patent on cannabis is a neuroprotectant as well. But this is my second aha moment in life so we all crashed in my house and got woken up to a loud noise. Ellie walked into a sculpture and broke a sculpture that was in my house. And she was really apologetic, but she couldn't see until she medicated with cannabis. And I realized that, well, it works for my ADD, it works for her glaucoma. Is there a difference? So I started really, really investing a lot of time in reading and researching cannabis. And then my girlfriend, who's my ex-wife now, said I have to get a real job. So I did the corporate thing, worked for Price Waterhouse, PwC later, a venture capital company. I was a commercial real estate broker, moved to California, got involved in dispensary business. I was an owner and operator in 5 different dispensaries under the same brand. And one of the things I kept noticing was 2 people would consume the same chemical variety and have a completely different experience. So my ADD kicked in as well, hyper focusing. I found a video by a gentleman who sequenced the plant, first person to genetically sequence the plant. So I went to work with them as a consultant, learned a lot about genetic sequencing of plants. And their parent company was what's called pharmacogenomics company. So they did testing, human testing of how drugs affect individuals and drug interactions and et cetera. So I got into human genetics. And one day I had an aha moment. I said, we have plant genetics here, we have human genetics here. Let's bring those two together. And they had no interest in it. They actually closed down the human side. So I was lucky to find some smart scientists and launched EndoDNA in 2017. So that's sort of the long journey to. But endo has involved a lot more outside the endocannabinoid space. But that's sort of how we started.
What an incredible story. I mean, not often not often do we hear or meet people like yourself that unintentionally came across something that helped them significantly in their life, but as a byproduct was kicked out, was homeless for a little bit, started putting yourself together more, getting yourself on a path forward in life, but ultimately came back to something that has had a huge and impact, beneficial impact to you, and that's what you do now. I love it. That's cool. That's great. Tell us more about EndoDNA. What do you guys do? What is it? What's your product? What's your offering?
So I mean, and you hit the nail on the head with a statement. I just want to kind of say to people that we always talk about pursuing your passion, and some people, like I love music, and I was listening to Slash from Guns N' Roses. I just went to see him at the Grammy Museum. One of the things he talked about when he picked up a guitar, he automatically knew that this is what he's going to do for the rest of his life. He would play 6-8 hours a day, just nonstop. Most of us don't have that. We don't know what our passion really is. So try everything. But at some point, you're going to connect to that and you're going to figure out. Even I had a friend of mine that he's in finance. He played hockey all his life. He's now in his 50s. He's not going to play hockey professionally. He realizes, but he loves it. And I said to him, maybe one of the things you can do is merge your skill set of finance and bring it into something that's sports oriented. Now you can be at least in an environment where it kind of satisfies, fulfills what you want it to do. So I just think it's really important for us to never give up searching that what is going to connect with us, that true meaning of why we're here. So, but EndoDNA, we're a genetic testing and analysis company for healthcare professionals, pretty much. So when we met with the FDA, they asked us, what is the purpose of your test? And our answer originally was to help people either mitigate or avoid a possible adverse event. So we are very similar to how you would be like a 23andMe, Ancestry.com. We have a kit. The kit has a buccal swab. It's just a big Q-tip. You swab the inside your cheek. We're HIPAA, we're GDPR compliant. You register that. The registration is then de-identified, meaning that your personal information is going to be given a number, an identifier, just like you would with a medical record. And then you send that sample over to our lab. It'll take a couple weeks, and then you will get your results. And you will log into your portal, and you will get your results. So the way that we work with healthcare professionals is threefold. Number one, we have something we call lab in the box. So if you're a healthcare professional, you want to be in the DNA space, we would then create a white label DNA test for you, your own portal for your patients, and you can use DNA testing in your facility. The second one is our interpretation service, where we can take raw data from any other DNA test, or if we already have your saliva and now you took the endocannabinoid system test, but now you want to do a female hormone health test, you don't have to swab. You can just use our software that's AI driven to create your personalized report for that as well. So we have multiple reports on like I said, the endocannabinoid system, where we have a patent on. We have a patent on a machine learning algorithm. We have a female hormone health test to help women perimenopause, postmenopause, and during menopause, men's hormone health, skin, nutrigenomics, and mental health. And we even have a canine report. And the third part of what we do is our interactive treatment plan. So the main thing and differentiator between us and most of the other DNA companies, because I've done a whole bunch of DNA tests, and my question was always like, well, now so what? So I found something out about myself. What do I do about it? There's no action. So we bookended it with an interactive treatment plan. So this is what is being suggested. Now, the healthcare professional can go and modify that, and then the AI will learn and say, well, there was 100 people that had similar genetic predisposition that took this protocol and showed efficacy. So it always revolves a feedback loop that goes to the cloud, and then the AI starts making predictive inferences.
So an individual like myself can go on, register, get a kit, or get this test, take it, send it back, get my results, and then I can take those results to my provider.
Yeah, or your provider can order the test for you, or you can work in conjunction with your provider. We do sell direct to consumer as well through our partners, but mostly we empower healthcare professionals to provide that service to their patients.
So cool! It's like it's like a 23andMe specific towards. Is it all cannabis related? Because that's so interesting. I've always been under the impression that we still don't really know all of the things that cannabis can do for people. I'm an advocate myself, but it's cool. Like, you essentially find out how you can react to certain things, how it can help you individually based off of my DNA.
It's not all cannabis related. We have one test that is the endocannabinoid system test, and we have other tests. But just since you brought up cannabis, we don't know. We don't know a lot because we haven't had the opportunity to conduct as many clinical trials with humans as we have, in vitro, et cetera. But, we're in the middle of 10 clinical studies right now. We're published on PubMed. So there's a lot of research that's going on right now. But for the cannabis side, just to kind of illuminate that a little bit more and unpack it, the test looks at your genetic predispositions to possible adverse events that may be triggered by certain cannabinoids and what you're predisposed to. So then it'll look at your cannabinoid and terpene profile that is sort of your secret sauce. Like, this is your sweet spot and you want to avoid different things. The second thing that it does, it looks at drug to drug interactions. So if you're taking prescription medication, you're taking other supplementation, we'll see if there may be an interaction between that and your phytocannabinoids. And the third thing is dosing. So depends on how you metabolize, we look at metabolic function and give you some insight on what is the best way for you to dose. And then all that information on the cannabis, on the endocannabinoid system test, we will then look at products based on the certificate of analysis of the test result of a product. We run that through an algorithm and we'll show you how close that product matches the suggested ratio based on your genetics. And then the feedback loop gets us to hone in. So that's the endocannabinoid system test. So we have a patent on the use of DNA to make recommendations associated with the endocannabinoid system to present that through a graphical user interface. But the female hormone health test, that's called like menopause biotype. We created that with Dr. Jennifer Berman, who's one of the top female sexual health doctors in the country. And she came to us and asked a question. She said, we have a lot of women that are coming in, they're perimenopause, and they're starting to experience side effects. And even within menopause, and side effects can be, poor lack of sleep, hot flash severity, hot flash frequency, weight gain, a lot of these different things. So she asked, is there a way that genetically we can see somebody who's predisposed to that and mitigate that before it actually turns itself on? And so we came up with a test for that. And the solution for that is hormone optimization, personalized supplementation. It could be phytocannabinoids, it doesn't have to be. Here's your vitamins, here's your supplements, here's your nutrients. And then feeding that back with optimizing the hormone levels, we're seeing a lot of really, really good responses. And then, there's so many different things when a doctor prescribes a medication that they don't look at. I had a conversation with a very successful C-level executive, and he had a bad business deal. He started to get depressed I guess it happens. Some people are predisposed to that. And he got prescribed an antidepressant medication. And he was driving with his kid to a soccer game and his wife. And he was driving around LA, the canyons. And he said, I had a thought that I can just drive off this road. And that's it. And he started getting suicidal thoughts. He had to pull over. And his wife was like, are you okay? He's like, no, I'm not okay. I should not be driving right now. And so when he was talking to his psychopharmacologist, he did a pharmacogenomics test and he saw that the drugs that were prescribed to him were all red. It means that he should not be taking them because he has treatment-resistant depression. And there's maybe about 30% of the population that are getting prescribed drugs that they will be resistant to, but they will still get all the side effects from that, which is, suicidal thoughts is one of those. So we want to make sure that up front, it's precision wellness, personalized health and wellness. Like I'm not the same as you, you're not the same as me, but 99.9% of us are the same. It's that 0.1% of our genetic variance that makes a difference. So if we know where our own personalized potholes are in our road, we can use our DNA as sort of our GPS system of life. And if we're using it that way, we can avoid those potholes and we know what they are to us. So we can then mitigate and have much more personalized experience with our health and wellness.
That's so interesting. I'm fascinated. I love what you're doing. It's so cool. And how you got to here, just adds to all of it. It's so interesting. So let's transition into like what tell us about the composition of the team of EndoDNA. Like how many people do you guys have now? Are you all local and central there in LA? Are you distributed? Are you, in the US, outside the US? What does that all look like?
Well, it transitioned, it changed, and complete transparency. COVID really punched us in the face, like a lot of different companies, and so when we raised money initially, we had seed investors, we bootstrapped, we had our Series A round close in 2019. I made the decision right in the beginning of 2020. I made the decision to transition the company to be a lot more B2B and work with a lot of companies that do a lot of their business through conferences, et cetera, which was really working for us right at the end of 2019. So we transitioned our business. So our team consisted of this. It's myself and my co-founder at a C-suite, our CFO, our CMO, and our CTO. Then I had our customer service was here in the US. And then we had some of our marketing and a few salespeople. So we're a team of about 10 people. And during COVID, our business was down 80% because those companies that were out there doing shows stopped going out there doing shows. So we have to really, really pivot and transition and really try to get our company back on track. So I was forced to let some people go, and we started focusing our efforts on a more, a model that allows us to outsource a little bit more and fractional resources. So now I have a fractional CMO, and I have a CTO that is also doing sort of fractional CTO, but he runs a team that is in Florida and in India. So I have about 150, 160 resources that are available to me that are not my employees, they're outsourced resources. Same way with marketing, I have my fractional CMO, and then she utilizes other resources that are outsourced, so I don't have to keep those in-house. We transition our customer support to the Philippines as well, which allows us, there's some redundancy, but allows us to cut costs and create great customer service because our team is fantastic there. So we have to pivot and kind of make sure that we have the right roles that are in-house, and then we're able to leverage and outsource some of those teams that are outside of our company.
That's so, yeah. I mean, COVID sucked. Like there's no other way around it, but it forced us to evolve, right? Like, it's not often you have like a big triggering event that forces innovation and evolution. And the way you've tackled that is commendable. You know, I think a lot of companies just waved the white flag or held out, leveraged government resources, and hoped that things would change. And in a lot of ways, they've gone back to normal in some aspects. But this digital, you know, virtual, remote world will never go away. It's here to stay, and it's going to continue to grow and evolve on its own. And having that outlook of like, okay, we need to make changes. How can we adapt to not just survive but also thrive? That's the right way to go. And it sounds like you guys have been doing that. So so you've got a core team still, it sounds like, and then you've got a plethora of, you know, fractional and contractual resources. Like, do you guys still hire, like, or is it mostly outsourced at this point? Like, kind of most, you know, or are you guys still hiring key team members?
Yeah, we're hiring key team members, and we're also in the middle of our Series B raise. So I have allocation of resources for funding for those roles. Like I have a fractional COO, but I need the operational person in house so I can afford their salary. That's a person that I definitely want to bring in house because they touch every part of my company. So that's an important role. So the key roles are there, but you know, what we're doing now has become such a staple of work. Like I would travel all over the world. I've spoken from Africa to South America, all over. I was on planes nonstop, speaking at conferences, doing keynotes. I mean, I've been to maybe 2 conferences this year because it's all like this. So being able to leverage technology, AI. And I know like people are like, oh, AI is scary. It's machine learning. There's so many resources that are available to us that we didn't have before. And as you said, you have to evolve with the times. And yes, there are definitely and advisors. Having key advisors, like we have an advisor as a PhD in machine learning. Man, we're picking our brain all the time because there's so many different things. Technology is moving so rapidly that being able to have key advisors that sort of, as Tony Robbins used to say, success leaves clues, and they leave sort of a breadcrumb trail because they've done it before. So maybe you don't have the employees that have that kind of acumen, but they have a certain role and a certain skill set. But if you pair that with an advisor and an advisory board that actually had that success to companies, public, or whatever it is that you want to do, you can actually use their business acumen to be able to prop yourself up as well.
That's so cool. And you're spot on. So right now, when you are, first of all, we need to talk briefly after, because I love the way you're thinking and going about all this. So I want to talk more about that. But as it pertains to EndoDNA, when you are currently in the process of finding a key team member, whether it's on-site, local, or somewhere else, how do you go about finding them, and then how do you go about ensuring that they're the right person?
The ensuring the right person is tricky. How do I go about finding them? LinkedIn is probably my number one resource. And nowadays, it seems to me that there are so many resources that are available. It's not the easiest thing to get a job these days. So you can get really good resources that are available, through networks. It's about getting the right resource. And your second question is an interesting one because I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how to find the right resource, and I'll tell you why. You can have skill sets, You can do, I used to do coaching for different companies on how to do sales, and you do the Myers-Briggs, and you do all disc tests, and you do all these different personality assessment tests. But until you work with somebody, there's a certain culture, there's certain values, and that misalignment of culture and values is detrimental to a company. So you can get a home run, hitter who's going to go out and close deals, but if their values are misaligned with the corporate values, it becomes sort of like a cancer within the company. So you can't do the trade-off between somebody who's your rock star and somebody who's going to affect your culture. And I don't know, I haven't figured out exactly how to preemptively know this up front without actually having that person fit into the culture, unless we do a trial period of like, you're going to work here for 60 days or something like that, and then we'll try to figure it out. But I'm open to ideas.
Yeah, it's not easy, right? I mean, gauging culture fit, gauging and measuring personality and the blend with the team and all that, it's just not easy. And often I think some leaders, some employers, I think they overdo it. I think they overthink it, and they're looking for perfection. Um, I mean, like you said it a minute ago on a different topic, but every one of us is different, from how we look to our personalities to how we operate and how we think. And I think instead of trying to push, push getting the perfect mixed person that perfectly fits in, I think we need to look more at, like, what, who are they, and what have they done, what have they been through, and how have they handled what they've been through. um, what do the people that they've worked with say about them, right? Like, um, and there's ways to measure that, that I can chat with you about too. But ultimately, I think taking that time in, if you feel good about someone, but you're never going to know if the perfect person is going to be the long-term perfect fit, because they might leave, or maybe something goes down and there's not the right fit anymore after a certain amount of time, or whatever. And we all make mistakes too, right? So I think you have a good philosophy of, like, when you feel good enough, you bring them in and you see how it goes, right? That's not a bad way of doing it.
Yeah,
When
and you're right. By the way, our CTO got poached, but I'll tell you, I have an intangible. There's one thing that I look for in people that is extremely important to me, and that's likability. I want to work with people I like because I'm going to see them every day. I'm going to talk to them, even if I don't see them in person. I have to like the people that work with me. And they don't have to like the same music as me. They don't have to have the same hobbies as me, but there's a certain energetic flow quality in a person that you connect with, and you just know it. And the opposite is true as well. I've had so many people with the most fantastic CVs, and and people have told me but there's something about them. My spider sense is tingling. There's something about them that it just doesn't connect. And you have to go with that gut instinct. That instinct is so learned. You may not know this because you're not aware, but there is all these experiences you had in your life that are stored in your subconscious. And when your spider sense is tingling, that actually is a signal from your brain.
recall.
Yeah, it's your vagus nerve goes to your gut, goes back and forth and says, "Hey, we've been here before." Just you may not remember, but we've been here before. So when that's triggered, you have to listen to your instinct for sure.
100%. So, kind of back to your current dynamic with the teams. You've got a handful of fractional people that are part of the team, but maybe it's not their all-in full-time thing. And then you've got some outsourced resources or contractors. Um, do you still try to put some sort of gauge on all of these people, or are you more reliant on those leaders or fractional leaders to somehow gauge and make sure, like, I mean, if you got 150 people around, in India, working on your product or, your tech, do you guys work on trying to make sure that they're also the right kind of people, or do you rely more on like how they're led and how they're managed?
Yeah, I don't. I rely on the CTO to be able to oversee and provide reports. So the key is to be able to have really good open communications. And I'd say one of the biggest gaps that I see, especially with working with fractional resources or outsourced resources, it's the by when part. It always missing. Like I just got a proposal last night. I'm looking at it, and there's a bunch of parts to it, and then there's no dates. I need to know by when. I need to hold you accountable to those dates, and I need to make sure that there's some accountability. And that's the key. If you're going to use those type of resources, it's not easy to manage because you have to make sure that you hold people accountable. They have other projects that are happening, so that's the one thing that we're trying to get a better handle on is on time, on budget, and if not, what happens? What do I
Yeah.
do? Like,
Yeah. What is the consequence of that? Yeah.
exactly. Is there a consequence? So I'm not a big stick guy, and that's my that's my own personality. I'm more of a carrot guy. I like to incentivize milestones. You reach certain milestones, bonus, all these kind of things. I really like to do that. But if you keep slipping and you keep missing, and also, by the way, that has to do with your executive team, and sometimes your executive team also has a shareholder interest. Now you're talking about partners. You're talking about shareholders in your company. Well, what do I do? It's not that easy to let a shareholder go. How do I get them to behave in the way, I kind of equate this to my dog, which is probably the worst kind of.
No
Or
judgment.
maybe
No judgment.
maybe I should do my daughter instead. It'd be easier. But it's about like if you're gonna train your puppy, right? So do you train your puppy if they make a mess in the house? Do you sort of hit them with a newspaper and say no, don't do that, or do you not do anything? And when they go outside and they do, an action that you reward them with a treat. So that is the goal. That's more of my sort of management style that I like to do that. But when you don't have accountability and you don't have recourse because your partners, equity shareholders, are not performing, that you have to go to the board. There's all kinds of different issues. So I still, I struggle to find the best mix of sort of carrot and stick and how to incentivize, especially executives, to be able to perform. And one of the things is, having a cool work environment, having complete transparency and open communication, even if things are going on in people's lives, with no judgment. Let's go and talk about this. And you know, HR, I think, is a big part of it. Some things in a big company, some things you can't talk about, and but in a smaller company like ours, I like to make it more of an open family style environment. So come in, this is, off the record, let's have a conversation, let's see what's going on, kind of thing. So that's important
Well,
to me.
culture is it's a tricky one, right? Like, I think what most people, most leaders, most business owners, CEOs, whatever, a lot of them don't fully understand that your culture starts with you. The leadership, the management, but ultimately those that are at, and this isn't for any other reference to say like people are beneath, but those that, like, it starts at the top. So the way you operate and the way you handle things, the way you treat your people, how you go about doing that, having this, like, building more of a community within the company rather than, you know, these are your roles, this is your responsibilities. I'll be watching the reports, right? Like, but doing it the way you do it, that will trickle down more and more. as long as you're operating that way. And so you're setting that pace, you're setting that tone, you're establishing the culture by who you are and how you operate. And there's no doubt that there's a lot of different versions of that work. But then it comes back to when you're building your team, you're finding your people, finding those people that resonate with that culture, that are on the same page, that want that maybe they're that way too, in different aspects. So very cool that you do that, and I think that there's no right way to do it, right?
I forgot one more resource. And I apologize to them. Paid interns. We have amazing interns from graduate programs like a USC, a UCLA. I mean, some of the most brilliant people that I've ever met in my life. I've learned so much from them, and we make sure we pay our interns, we manage our interns, and we provide them an opportunity for growth. And I'm starting to do so one of the things that's went away from our company is this one-on-one kind of coaching, going over your DNA results and creating a personalized health and wellness program and all that stuff, because we're focusing on B2B and people are asking for it. So I'm actually doing some of that with people, with a healthcare professional together. We're sort of doing some of that stuff. And in building the page on my new site that allows that, I went and asked people for a testimonial. Hey, can you give me a testimonial? I never ask for anything, but I got some from my interns or people who work with me, which actually made me tear up. It was I didn't realize the impact that, I had or we had on their lives and their careers. And, now some of them are in law school, they're going to be successful lawyers and politicians and all that stuff. And when they send me a video, 30, 45 seconds, it was just extremely impactful. So, just remember what you're doing and how you're communicating to people and how you're treating people can affect them for the rest of their lives. So it's really important to, be really, really self-aware when you're doing that, have an emotional intelligence.
You hit the nail on the head, and very cool of you to shout out your paid interns, your interns. I'm sure 99.9% of the time that doesn't happen by the people at the top. So good on you for that. And honestly, how I usually finish the show here is by asking you to share a lesson learned or some advice on building your teams. And you just did. Like, care, be aware, spend the time, invest the time. Like, that's what I heard from you. In summary, and it will come back. It's the karma. Like, what you put out there will come right back to you. Sometimes it's not so clear, and sometimes it's very, and for you to have those experiences, that says a lot about you and how you run things and how this business that you're building. And there's no doubt in my mind that you're going to continue to have the success that you're working towards, because your people want it too, and you're all working in synergy together. So very cool. Any last thoughts or comments that you do want to share though before we wrap up?
I think it's important to be able to treat people like, we get into this mindset, and I was told back in the day by other people who were in my life that, have you read this and this, CEO's book? They're tough and they're this, and look at the way they treat their employee. You're too nice. You're this sometimes. My thing I'm in my 50s at this point, so I've lived, let's say half of my life, hopefully,
Yeah.
or more. But I just think one lesson for everybody to take away is you have to be true to yourself. You can never be like Steve Jobs, because we don't know how Steve Jobs really was. Be true to yourself. If you are that person, amplify that. Go all in and connect to that. And when you try to be somebody else, and I've had this conversation with a friend of mine. When I used to work at like New York and Philadelphia, there was a certain look right? I have my suit and I have there's labels everywhere, my watch, my belt, and all that stuff. Moved to LA, I met some of the most successful people that are wearing shorts and t-shirts and flip-flops, billionaires, because they're true to who they are and they feel comfortable in their skin. So that's one of the things I would suggest that people start really looking at is be comfortable with who you are. And if I want to, if I want to have tattoos and I don't want to hide them and I wear my, my band tees and all that stuff, that's me. That's the way I'm going to be. And it doesn't change anything about my essence, but that's my personality. I feel more comfortable that way.
Love it. Thank you for sharing that. That is all too often forgotten or not valued enough. And I fully agree with that. Personally, professionally, all of it. I'm all in on that. So thanks for sharing that. Len, thanks so much for being a guest on the podcast. For anyone listening in or watching this in the future, Len May, CEO, co-founder of Endo DNA. Check him out. Look up the company. It's going to be something. It's continuing to grow, and that's awesome. So thanks so much for sharing and being part of the show.
Thank you.